This is precisely what little Alice, the daughter of Luz María López Morales, witnessed in her tender years. On January 22, 2021, her mother's body was discovered by sanitation workers beneath a manhole cover. Luz María had devoted her life to aiding victims of violence, yet no one could have foreseen that she would become the final victim she could not save. If you wish to grasp the full truth of what transpired, read on without pause. Luz María del Rocío López Morales entered the world on May 17, 1995 in Guatemala, enveloped in the boundless love of her parents, Ada Morales and Byron López. As their first child, she brought indescribable joy. But that initial bliss soon gave way to concern when it was discovered that Luz María suffered from pyloric stenosis, requiring surgery. At just 45 days old, she underwent the procedure which, by the grace of God, proved successful. From then on, her parents dreamed of watching her grow into a strong, independent woman forging her own path. Affectionately known as Lucita to all, she took her first steps before her first birthday and began speaking soon after. She was a calm, responsible child with a sensitive soul that found solace in ballet. From a young age, her passion was evident. She trained with unwavering discipline, and each performance on stage was an act of pure devotion. At 17, upon completing high school, Lucita chose to study criminology. Her education was relentless, courses in Guatemala and abroad, always driven by a thirst for knowledge. It was during these formative years that life presented an unexpected turn. In August 2017, she accompanied her mother to a dealership to buy a motorcycle for her brother Omar. There they were assisted by Jorge, a young man from outside her usual circles who would leave an indelible mark. Following that chance encounter, Jorge began messaging her, not about motorcycles, but to learn more about her. He was captivated from the start. She found him charming. Their flirtation was brief. Within weeks, they were dating, and by year's end, they decided to marry. But as in the best of tales, life threw a small obstacle their way. Days before the wedding, the reception hotel canceled without warning. Unwilling to delay even a day, Jorge took charge, securing another venue and ensuring their plans proceeded seamlessly. Soon after their marriage, Luz María became pregnant, and they welcomed a daughter named Alice. By then, neither Jorge nor Luz María had steady employment, and hardships began to mount. For a time, they moved in with his family. During one visit, Luz María's mother, Ada, recalled her daughter pleading to return home. She explained that at her in-laws, she received only one meal a day, insufficient for a breastfeeding mother. She feared it would harm her baby's health. She confessed to often lacking even money for tortillas, and the household atmosphere was cold with overt hostility from Jorge's entire family, including his brother Pablo. Once, Luz María shared how, after bathing her daughter, she left the tub in the bathroom. Pablo, enraged at the sight, hurled it at her face. Though she shielded her child, it struck them both. After confiding in her mother, they agreed it was best for Luz María and her daughter to return to her childhood home. In October 2020, Luz María secured a position at the public ministry as a criminal investigations technician. She was assigned to the MINA program, providing comprehensive care to child and adolescent survivors of violence. Around this time, the couple rented a home in the Las Hojarascas neighborhood in Mixco's Zone 1. Luz María also purchased a car, intending for Jorge, who remained jobless, to use it for passenger transport. Yet independent living did little to mend their strained relationship. As later revealed, Luz María attempted separation multiple times, thwarted by Jorge's excessive jealousy, which poisoned their coexistence. One such attempt came on December 9, 2020. Luz Maria arrived at her parents' home seeking help after a fierce argument. Ada remembered her daughter pulling up in the car she had bought herself, distraught, trembling, and too nervous to park properly. Her brother had to assist. Inside, Luz Maria broke down, declaring she could endure no more and wished to live with them again. She revealed a fracture from months earlier, previously attributed to an accident, but now confessed as Jorge's doing during a fight. This time she seemed resolute in leaving. But 8 days later, Jorge appeared at her parents' door begging her return. He promised change, a fresh start as a family. Hoping for improvement, Luz Maria gave him another chance. Inevitably, old patterns resurfaced. As the new year dawned, financial woes intensified. On January 18, 2021, Luz Maria called her mother, sounding despondent. She had no money for her daughter's milk. Concerned, Ada urged her to come the next day. She would buy it herself. But on January 19th, Luz Maria did not appear. Despite her dire need, she failed to collect the aid. Ada messaged and called repeatedly, receiving no reply. Worry escalated. Eventually, messages arrived from her daughter's number, but Ada would later learn they were not from Luz Maria. On January 20th, in the afternoon, Jorge visited the Integral Attention Model for Children and Adolescents at the public ministry, Luz Maria's workplace, inquiring about her. No one had seen her that day. Later, he called his mother-in-law, anxiously claiming Luz Maria was missing, unresponsive to messages or calls, and possibly kidnapped. Ada found his reaction peculiar. Wasting no time, she went to her daughter's office, where it was confirmed Luz Maria had not shown up. Alarmed, the family reported her disappearance, activating the Isabel Claudina alert, a protocol for immediate searches of missing women in Guatemala. The alert described Luz Maria as 25 years old, last seen near 6th Avenue and Simeon Cañas Avenue in Guatemala City's Zone 2, dressed in pink with 3 tattoos on her arms and back. From the outset, investigators eyed Jorge as the prime suspect, treating the case as a potential homicide. On January 22nd, during routine searches, municipal workers cleaning the drainage system on Simeon Cañas Avenue lifted a manhole cover. Inside a plastic bag, they found what appeared to be a lifeless body, mere meters from Luz Maria's workplace. The remains were in advanced decomposition, delaying initial identification. Later, her mother recognized her. Analyses by the National Institute of Forensic Sciences and INASIF confirmed death by asphyxiation via strangulation. From there, the National Civil Police's Femicide unit launched a thorough investigation. One early step involved reconstructing the couple's relationship profile, reviewing phone records and security footage. The inquiry uncovered a troubling reality, a marriage marred by control and violence. Friends and family described Jorge as possessive, jealous, aggressive, dictating Luz Maria's every interaction, who she spoke to, what messages she sent, even if she lunched with male colleagues whom he threatened on occasion. Testimonies revealed physical abuse from the marriage's start. Luz Maria's parents provided details reinforcing that this was no isolated incident, but the tragic culmination of an abusive dynamic. Investigators also found emails from Luz Maria explicitly detailing her husband's mistreatment. Upon entering the couple's shared home, agents found it filthy and chaotic. The search yielded evident traces: Luz Maria's nasal fluids, blood, and charred flesh remnants. Clues suggested Jorge had basic criminology knowledge, as her parents recalled his interest in her forensic investigation books. The most damning evidence was blood traces in the trunk of their shared car. With this, the first instance criminal court for femicide issued Jorge's arrest warrant. The 23-year-old was apprehended on January 23rd in Guatemala City's Zone 1 on 15th Avenue. He was placed in pretrial detention as the Women's Prosecutor's Office continued probing. Hours after the arrest, Ada spoke publicly. She revealed that neighbors had sent her an audio recording shortly after the murder, capturing Luz Maria's desperate cries for help and her granddaughter's wails. Ada expressed profound sorrow and frustration, noting that instead of recording, those people could have called emergency services or intervened. With resolute voice, she urged, "If you witness or hear violence, do not stand idle. Seek help, intervene, act." Days later, on January 31st, hundreds of women took to the streets demanding justice. They marched with strength, dignity, rage, and grief, raising their voices not just for Luz Maria but for all women victims of violence. Banners bore her image and messages like, "Justice for Luz Maria, we miss Luz Maria, and not one less." Guatemala's human rights ombudsman publicly voiced concern over the alarming rates of violence against women, and though days turned to months, the call for justice endured. In mid-November, months after the murder, family, friends, and supporters gathered outside the Femicide Justice Center for a silent yet powerful vigil, holding signs that spoke volumes. One read, "Mine was a femicide, not an accident." Luz Maria's family navigated a path fraught with pain and hurdles, yet they persisted, demanding justice amid delays and legal maneuvers, some from the judicial system, others from the defense. Clear examples were the postponements. The evidence presentation hearing was suspended twice. Finally, on December 17, 2021, nearly a year after the crime, the intermediate phase of the judicial process unfolded. The public ministry presented compelling evidence, documents, expert reports, and testimonies supporting the accusation that Jorge had physically assaulted Luz Maria, attempted to burn her body, wrapped it in plastic, and abandoned it in a drain. The charge was aggravated femicide. The prosecution formally requested a public oral trial. Joined by attorneys from the Attorney General's office, representing Alice, and the Lopez family's lawyer, Jorge's defense sought expanded forensic analysis for a detailed explanation of the cause of death, along with provisional case closure and supervised release with biometric monitoring. The hearing closed with Ada's heart-wrenching testimony. She recounted how her granddaughter had witnessed her mother's final moments, seeing the violence firsthand and knowing exactly who was responsible. Ada requested protection for the child and family, citing threats received. Judge Mendez ruled that the facts aligned clearly with the imputed crimes, recognizing the Lopez family as collateral victims and allowing them to participate as plaintiffs alongside the Attorney General's office. She denied the defense's closure request and set the trial start for December 23rd that year, before the Femicide and Gender-Based Violence Sentencing Tribunal in Guatemala Department. Despite further delays, the trial commenced on July 26, 2022. Jorge, the accused, was positioned at one end of the courtroom, separated by a plastic screen from Luz Maria's family, preventing visual contact with testifying witnesses. During the case presentation, Femicide prosecutor Marlon Ordóñez starkly detailed the crime. Jorge had murdered Luz Maria, attempted to incinerate her body, and hidden it in a sewer. Per the investigation, the act occurred on the night of January 19th. Following an argument, Jorge strangled his wife, then moved the body to the garden. In a corner, he tried to erase evidence with flammable liquid. However, noticing the smoke becoming visible and fearing neighbors might alert authorities, he halted before causing greater damage. He then shrouded her body in plastic and placed it in the trunk of the car they shared. The following morning, Jorge drove toward the area where Luz Maria worked. He paused for a few minutes in front of her office, a calculated performance to simulate a normal drop-off and maintain an appearance of normalcy. Then he continued down Simeon Cañas Avenue until he found a place where he decided to dispose of the body. Back at the home they shared in the courtyard, forensic experts discovered damning evidence. There were clear drag marks etched into the ground and the telltale signs of a fire. Samples were collected for DNA testing, and according to the prosecution, the results confirmed it was Jorge who had attempted to incinerate his wife's body. One of the elements that reinforced the accusation was the plastic sheet the body had been wrapped in. Analysis revealed it was the couple's mattress protector. Fragments of the brand's emblem were still visible, printed on the material. Inside the house, they also found a piece of the rope which, according to the investigation, Jorge used to bind the body before dumping it in a sewer. Another key piece of evidence was Luz Maria's cell phone. Geolocation data showed it never left Jorge's side. The device was tracked to the same locations he visited, a fact corroborated by his own phone's location history, including the house they shared, the home of relatives he visited after disposing of the body, and other key points in the investigation. Security camera footage also supported the prosecution's evidence, strengthening the case against him. For their part, Jorge's defense team insisted on his innocence. They argued the investigation had been flawed and that their client, far from hiding, had actively participated in the search for Luz Maria on the day she was reported missing. They also suggested that the intense media coverage had created public pressure on the judges to secure a conviction. However, Luz Maria's father pointed out that Jorge had given contradictory accounts of her disappearance. At first, he claimed to have dropped her off at a store near her work. But when the family received an audio recording of Luz Maria's screams for help, his story changed dramatically. During the trial, experts who participated in the investigation presented their conclusions. They explained that one of the clearest signs of strangulation were the bruises on her neck, likely caused by the pressure of her attacker's fingers. It was also determined that 80% of her body had been burned and she had sustained a head injury which, according to their analysis, occurred while she was still alive. Omar López Morales, Luz Maria's brother, also testified. He recalled that on the evening of January 19, 2021, his sister posted a photo of her car on her WhatsApp status, adorned with 2 hearts. He replied, commenting on how nice the car looked. The response he received was a thank you and a message supposedly from Luz Maria, saying he would soon have one of his own. But something felt off. His sister rarely used punctuation on that platform, raising his suspicion that someone else had written the reply. He recounted that even the next day, January 20th, after Luz Maria had already been murdered, he sent another message and received a response from her number. These doubts intensified when the family reviewed security footage from near Luz Maria's workplace. The recordings showed Jorge's car parked nearby, but Luz Maria was never seen getting out of the vehicle. An aunt of Luz Maria called to testify shared observations that deepened the suspicion against Jorge. She said she had noticed strange behavior from the very beginning. For instance, while the family scoured the streets and neighborhoods searching for Luz Maria, Jorge never participated. He was also absent during the searches conducted near the home they shared. The prosecution also presented several witnesses who chose to testify anonymously for their safety. One, identified as Witness A, stated that Luz Maria was afraid of her husband. She had confessed that he frequently threatened her, once telling her coldly that if she ever left him, he would cut her into pieces and throw her in a ditch. According to the testimonies presented, Luz Maria was a constant victim of physical, economic, and psychological violence. On September 13, 2022, Dr. Rodrigo Mendez, a forensic expert from the National Institute of Forensic Sciences, took the stand. He testified that in the days between the disappearance report and the discovery of the body, he had conducted a physical examination of Jorge. He found several bruises, particularly on his arms, hands, and chest. These injuries, he explained, could have been defensive wounds inflicted by Luz Maria as she fought for her life. The marks were documented in a video recorded by the public ministry during a search of the accused's home, as evidence of his physical state. In another hearing in late September 2022, the prosecution presented security camera footage from January 19th and 20th, 2021. The last images of Luz María alive were captured by cameras at the Brescia building of the public ministry and by the security camera at the entrance to her residential community. In the days leading up to the sentencing hearing, the court received the physical evidence of the crime: the plastic sheet used to wrap the body, face masks, and the rope used to bind her. In a particularly harrowing moment, Ada, Luz Maria's mother, shared with the press an audio recording in which her granddaughter, between recounted what she had witnessed that night. Hours before the verdict, Jorge spoke. He claimed he was not a murderer and pleaded for his freedom, stating he wanted to be reunited with his daughter. But on October 11, 2022, the court delivered its verdict. Jorge was found guilty of the murder of Luz María and sentenced to 50 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. After the sentence was read, Ada expressed that while nothing could bring her daughter back, she felt a sense of relief knowing that her killer had received the maximum penalty. She also hoped this case would shine a light on the violence that so many women endure in Guatemala, and that with justice their voices would no longer be silenced. What do you think about the role of family in situations of violence? Do you believe society is truly prepared to protect women at risk? We want to hear your thoughts. Let us know in the comments.